Well, democracy has had a bit of a tough time of it of late. Obviously, with her in the room and her in the room. I don't want to go into too much detail, but we know how they both did in recent elections. Disastrously. And that's being favourable. That's why I was so drawn to the idea from the Conservatives in the Queen's speech to introduce compulsory photo ID for voters, such as a passport or driving licence, in future elections. Given the number of proven cases of electoral fraud is vanishingly thin, but by its very nature, you're unlikely to ever get a true grip on the size of the problem. Now, it's only a few years ago that a mayor was booted from office in East London and the poll declared void due to wholesale fraud. Now, it is time this was brought in, along with a full review of the postal voting system, which has the look of being as genuine as a ruling from Speaker John Bercow. Opponents cry, it's vote rigging, but that's just baseless fear-mongering. Now, can I count on your vote?
You certainly cannot count on my vote for this. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to use your own words against you. You said democracy has had a bit of a hard time of late, and proven cases of voter fraud are vanishingly thin.
That's absolutely right.
So there is no point in this kind of legislation. And actually the thing that concerns me, as is always the case with this kind of these sorts of policies, it's the most vulnerable and the most underrepresented groups that are worst hit. So in July 2018, 20 charities came together to warn against this kind of legislation, from the Salvation Army, Age UK, Liberty, Centrepoint, because if you look at it at the moment, 11 million people in the UK do not have a driving licence or a passport.
Okay.
Often they are the poorest in society. Okay. And if we are living in an era where we're trying to encourage more people to vote,
right,
why would we want to make it harder?
But all I would say to that, and it's a very valid point, and it was something that worried me, but you may or may not be aware, it is a requirement in Northern Ireland. If you don't have a driver's licence or you don't have a passport, it is the local authorities to provide you at no cost, at no cost, with a card.
No, but the point is,
well,
let me finish. I want to know what ID are you going to have to produce to actually qualify that. They haven't told us what you're going to have to produce to qualify for that card.
Are you not worried, Nick, that this may be the first step towards compulsory ID cards in the country?
I'm not.
Are you worried about compulsory ID cards?
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. No,
so,
I don't
so
like
would
that
this
idea.
not be the first step towards that?
No, I genuinely don't think so, because while as you're going to have to produce it every 5 years on a Thursday, I don't want to be in a situation where a police officer can just stop you coming out of the corner shop and say, can I see your ID?
No, I don't think this takes us one step further.
I genuinely don't.
What I'm concerned is, say, in the US they've had this experience with, and it's seen as voter suppression.
This is one step closer to voter suppression.
It is correct that the most vulnerable people in society don't have the necessary identification in the US to be able to vote.
With the local authority giving you the card. But back to
I want to know what you need to prove to get the card.
I imagine you're probably your NHS card and your birth certificate. I don't know.
Look what happened with Windrush and NHS cards.
I mean,
Nick, please.
Okay.
I think,
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that all I was going to say is that there is the more admin and paperwork you introduce, whether it's getting a card from the local.
In a sentence, are you not worried about electoral fraud?
No.
Well, okay, so
you said yourself, it's vanishingly thin.
But we know of by its very nature.
That question, yes.
So
the answer is, I would be worried if it existed, and I'm wondering whether it exists in the numbers that make a difference to elections.
Clearly not.
I hear you.
Okay, so I'm not opposed to compulsory ID cards. I actually think they're a good idea, and I would be in favour of having those in the first place. So that's the first point. With that in mind, I've always thought it's very peculiar that you don't need any form of ID to vote. I need ID if I want to buy cigarettes, if I want to buy alcohol, if I need to go to a library often, I need to take a library
Well, that's because you look so young. I can buy booze any time of the day.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we have ID requirements for very simplistic things in our society, but something as monumental as determining who rules the society, we don't have them. So I would be in favour, but my question to you, and by the way, when we're talking about vanishingly small, it was 28 allegations of voter fraud in 2017 with only 1 conviction, so that's the numbers. But my question to you would be,
in the whole country.
my question to you would be, Nick, when I think about where the opportunities for voter fraud is, I think often about postal fraud, postal votes,
Yes.
How would you overcome that with photographic ID?
No, that won't be. That's a separate side. I'm just saying I
that's
do
where
think there's a real
that's
worry.
where
That's
most
where
of the
the fraud is.
Okay.
If there is fraud, it's
That's actually
likely to be
most of
there.
So we're finally poised. This is not like England v Bulgaria. It is 2-2. We turn for the penalty decider. Rachel Johnson, you will determine the outcome of this debate.
I started off agreeing with you, but you've lost me,
Oh,
I'm afraid.
What particularly lost you?
I think that one of the things I love about living in this country is the fact that you can walk into a village hall or a school on a Thursday and a lady or a man at a desk will accept you for who you are.
How about that?
And you can vote.
Or who you pretend to be.
You don't even have to bring your polling card. What June said is also true, because it will disadvantage BAME, the elderly who don't have these things, travelling communities,
the homeless.
Okay, if you want to reform the voting system, give the votes to 16-year-olds.
If you want to reform the voting system,
and then go take it from there. But this
why
isn't
can
the way.
I not? On this thing here, I can transfer thousands of pounds.
Well, you're very lucky.
Right.
It's no just show off, old man.
Do you want my bank?
I'm not all doing as well as you.
I can order
Coots take your call regularly, do
my
they?
evening meal. I can get a taxi to anywhere I want. Why can't I vote on this thing? I want to know that. I want to know why our
don't we
voting
have
system
digital
is still
voting?
based on paper. It's still out of date.
Can I
And we're trying to
bring
use
June
more
Sapon.
paper.
I don't often quote this man, but I would like to bring in a clip of Jeremy Corbyn, because I think he's actually right on this. Let's have a look.
We will not allow this government to stifle democracy by making it harder for people to vote. There are huge risks in the legislation being proposed, which will disproportionately affect working class, ethnic minority and young voters.
See, look, even a stop clock is right twice a day, right? So what I'm saying is, look, I want to go back to this smart voting idea.
Okay.
Well,
Maybe that combines both.
Anytime you introduce more paperwork, it costs more and becomes less efficient. So anyway, what would you guys do? How would you? What would you prefer to? How would you like to
I'm
vote?
into digital voting.
Yeah.
Hold on, madam. Well, you've just said, what about the vulnerable and the old? And he's taking it online and
because
you're
they can
supporting
No,
it.
because
They
you can
all
still
got
do
phones.
both. You can still manually vote.
I haven't got a grandmother, but my grandmother wouldn't have had a phone.
No,
but she could go in and vote.
She'd be about 120.
She could go and vote as she normally does. It's just an extra way of voting.
Yes.
But even now, you can give money to the homeless using machines, contactless. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of technology,
There
and
we
I
are.
would also bring it in for MPs to vote as well, going slightly off
Absolutely.
topic. But you
Makes
didn't
sense.
respond to my key point,
Sorry.
which is
Apologies.
postal votes is where the opportunity for real fraud is, and this doesn't stop that in any way, shape or form.
I mean, it's a separate conversation, but I'm happy to go down that route. I do think there are concerns, and indeed, if you look at the research, there are concerns about postal voting. There does appear that in some instances you almost have like the master of the house, if you will, decides to vote for, or there have been suggestions that someone has collected all the voting cards for an elderly or retirement home. Let's call it a retirement home, and you've suddenly got 25 or 30.
She just killed your argument.
30.
Yeah.
No, but so you only get a postal vote. You asked about postal voting.
She's buried your argument.
Send your answer to me in the post.